The most important contribution of Pythagoras and Pythagoreans is about mathematics. Pythagoras thought that mathematics is the highest form of abstraction. He used to say that the world is numbered. Aristotle said about Pythagoreans that the principles of mathematics were the principles of all things. What does it mean? It means that all the relations that you get in the world, all the laws that you get, they are based on mathematical proportions. And Pythagoreans used to interpret it in such a way that you can express all the principles and laws of the world in whole number ratios. Pythagoras' theorem was his most influential discovery. If you see the buildings of ancient Babylon or ancient Egypt, you will be amazed at how big these buildings are and how old they were. Obviously, the builders and architects of that time had a very good way of building. And the most important thing in building, the most important tool, especially to keep accounts, we call it the builder's set square. If you have ever opened your geometry set, you will find two triangles in it, one which is exactly equal and the other which is a little long on one side. You are seeing this in front of you. Builder's set square. If you pay attention to it, then one side of it is 3, the other side is 4, and the third side is in the proportion of 5. Similarly, whether you make it bigger or smaller, whenever you make a triangle according to 3, 4, and 5, the angle towards 3 and 4 will always be 90 degrees. And when you get the angle of 90 degrees, then you will be able to make big and good buildings. Why? Because the angle of 90 degrees is not only necessary, but when you want to build a straight wall, you need an angle of 90 degrees. And if you want to make a corner, which is exactly 90 degrees, then you need a measurement of 90 degrees. So in the olden days, the measurement was done in such a way that they used to make big triangles, builder's squares, which again was in the proportion of 3, 4, and 5. This is the only triangle whose sides are in an akin arithmetic proportion. That is to say, 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. And furthermore, it also forms a right angle triangle. Now this knowledge was with the Babylonians and the people of Egypt, and they used this knowledge to make their buildings. It was also used to make tunnels. But no one was able to prove this mathematically. The reason for this was that whenever you make a triangle whose sides are 3, 4, and 5, then its angle will be 90 degrees. Why? What is the scientific reason behind this? Pythagoras or Pythagoreans solved this thing. Today we do not know whether Pythagoras did it personally or his students did it after him. Anyway, we call this theorem Pythagoras' theorem. How did he prove this? If you see this on the feminist screen, he proved this by using 4 such set squares. When he put them together, it became clear to him that the big side, which we call the hypotenuse, its square area will always be equal to the area of a square and b square. When Pythagoras proved this thing that a square is equal to a square plus b square, he gave mathematical proof for the first time that why the builder's set square gives 90 degrees and why it is so important. Pythagoras wanted to connect his theory of mathematics with all other things. One day, Pythagoras was passing by a steel shop. He heard the sound of a hammer. When he heard this sound, he thought that this is a very musical sound. He thought that if the hammer is heavy or thin, it produces different musical notes. Today we know that this is not the case. The thing that the hammer is striking, the iron that it is hitting, the length of that iron will produce different musical notes. If it is a short length, it will produce a thin note. If it is a long length, it will produce a short note. Whether Pythagoras knew this or not, he applied this concept to a stringed instrument. There were stringed instruments in those days. He thought that the stringed music should also be in whole number proportions. First, he measured the length of the string. This guitar string is 65 centimeters long. When he divided that 65 by half, he got exactly an octave. Sound. This is the most harmonic interval. We know this about musicians. When he divided it into 3 parts, he got a fifth sound, which is the most harmonic sound after an octave. When he divided it into 4 parts, he got a third sound, and so on. From this, he got a scale of 7 notes. Today, when we play music, our instruments are not according to the Pythagorean scale. Our instruments are according to the modern, even temperament scale. So, there is a slight difference between today's scale and Pythagoras' scale. For example, the first note is the same, the second note is the same, the third note is the same, the fourth note is the same, but the difference is in the third note. In modern music, the third note is here, but the third note of Pythagoras' scale was a little lower. It was here. In this way, Pythagoras' scale sounds extremely harmonic in one scale. If you also want to experiment with your music, then play a little Pythagorean scale. I would also like to tell you an interesting thing, that in Muslims, Pythagorean scale was played a lot. Recently, Pythagorean scale was played for a century. Pythagoras' theory was that music can heal the soul and the body. Both poetry and music can heal the soul and the body. It can play a role of medicine. In fact, Pythagoras himself composed music. Pythagoras thought that music purifies the soul, removes all evil and diseases from it. Therefore, Pythagoras himself composed music and also composed poetry so that people's diseases can be cured. The most interesting thing about Pythagoras was that he thought that in the whole universe, we are always listening to music. These stars and planets, which are rotating around the world, he thought that when they rotate, they pass through an ether substance, which is a substance like air, which is called ether. When they rotate, as a result of their rotation, their sound can be heard, since they are in different direct proportions. For example, a planet can be 2 times far from us, a third, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Whatever it is, it varies in a whole number of proportions. Therefore, their collective sound, which is a collective sound, that is also music. This is what Pythagoras called the harmony of the spheres. The whole universe was a music universe in his imagination. Anyway, due to these theological issues, Pythagoras' school did not end. Pythagoras' school ended due to political issues. As I have told you before, Pythagoras, in political terms, supported the aristocratic faction. Now, there was a very big war in Croton, in which there were Sabirites on one side and Crotonians on the other. The leader of the Sabirites and the democratic faction of Crotonians was Cylon. The rebellion of Cylon was successful, and he considered Pythagoras his enemy. Pythagoras considered Cylon his enemy because Cylon represented Demos and Pythagoras represented Demos. Pythagoras represented the aristocratic faction. When Cylon came to power, he took many such 2 steps. For example, he took lands from the aristocratic faction and distributed them among the ATS poor. He forgave the debts of the poor, and Pythagoras opposed it. As a result of the opposition, Cylon destroyed Pythagoras' academy and started suppressing the Pythagoreans. In fact, it is said that when Cylon burnt the house of Pythagoras' friend Milo, Pythagoras himself was present in that house, and he burnt to ashes. Pythagoreans say that it did not happen, but Pythagoras left from there and died somewhere else. Whether he died or not, we do not know. Pythagorean school continued for another 50 years, but As a result of the suppression against him, he died. Whatever was the policy of Pythagoras, whatever was our opinion on it, putting it aside, there can be no doubt that the philosophical contribution of Pythagoras and Pythagoreans in the history of human beings is indeed a historical contribution. First of all, Pythagoras' own theorem explains why A2 and B2 are equal. Secondly, Pythagoras' thought had a great impact on human thought through Plato. In fact, some people even believe that Plato was a secret Pythagorean. He was influenced by Pythagoras and was in agreement with many of his thoughts. There are many examples of this. The most important example is that Plato also believed, like Pythagoras, that mathematics is the highest form of knowledge, the highest form of abstraction. It cannot be wrong. We can make mistakes in everything, but not in mathematics. That is why Plato kept the symbol of his academy the same triangle, which was also a symbol of Pythagoreans. And outside his academy, Plato wrote that a person who does not know geometry cannot enter this academy. Plato also had a similar thought of Pythagoras in relation to the soul. Pythagoras also had a great influence on Euclid, and Euclid's fundamental ideas of trigonometry and geometry were taught in Europe till the 19th century. So, Pythagoras and Pythagoreans have a key role in human thought in terms of growth and development.